please join me in welcoming Chris Doty and Ken Flannery.
Glad you're waiting for me.
You ever start your day, you've got a ton of energy, just a ton of energy. And throughout the day, you start to see something, you read a headline because you happen to see something on TV, and it starts to lose a little bit of energy, lose your steam. You start to become a little bit negative. Anybody here, that ever happened? I want to show you a way that you can take any day or any time you feel like that and turn it into a positive, completely shift how you're feeling. Anybody interested in that? All right. You may have seen this before. I'm going to rename it Going Big. BIG stands for Beginning in Gratitude. So this is the audience participation point of the play. This is where I like to get together and say, grab your pen, grab your pencil. I see you guys, there's some people already doing it. Some of you are prepared and already brought stuff with you. What we do here is take something over the last 60 or 80 days that you are grateful for. It can be as grateful as, I'm glad I had an umbrella when it rained yesterday. It can be, I like windshields. I'm glad Chris waited for me as I came across the stage. Anything you want. But take 60 or 80 seconds and go ahead and write down what you're grateful for, please. All right, to many of you who have done this before, it's fairly easy. It's fairly simple. To start it, though, it can be difficult to look back over that. Why? The world bombards us daily with negative news. It sells. It's in everything that we have. So what I like to do is share a bit of mine. So I've got so many. I start the day with, I'm grateful that I'm standing up today. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful I got to get my daughter Isabel up this morning at 6:50 and get her out to school, say a little prayer for her, get her on the bus. Also the same thing with Samantha. It's really one of those pieces that I got to run the bluff this morning at in between the two at Concordia. These are all fantastic, and I can continue on forever. I won't, in sparing some time. But gratitude makes a massive shift in who you are and how you feel. For instance, Ken has 4 children, and he has all sorts of gratitude. This is great. What are you grateful for?
Yeah, so I mean, it's endless, right, with the kids. But so recently, my daughter is in ballet. She's 6 years old. I have a 6, 5, 3, and an 18-month-old child. I think that's all of them. They're out there somewhere, right? So, but my daughter, 6 years old, in ballet, there was 200 ballet dancers in this recital that's going on, and the owner of the company wanted the kids to draw out what would be their ideal cover of the program. And so 200 kids did this. So she designed this whole thing, right? And on stage, she actually won. So she was the one that got selected for her artwork. She drew it out, and so I was very proud of my daughter at that. I'm proud of my kids and my wife and everything like that. But that was a big moment for my daughter. It's fun to watch little kids win because they have no idea what they're winning. You know, like, it's the innocence of winning, right? She stood up and she's like, "Oh, this is great. This is great." So yeah. So actually, Chris mentioned before he thought I drew this.
I did. I thought that might have been Ken. It's pretty close.
I know that I didn't. I know because everything's spelt right. So, but I drew a picture of Chris in a tutu.
That's all right. I resemble that remark occasionally. I have 2 daughters and a wife, so in our house, I may have worn a tutu. I'm not going to admit it. I very well may have. So, as is customary, who here would like to share something that they are grateful for? Yes, please look.
I had a chance Sunday morning, a good friend had been in the hospital and texted me, "Can you come and pick me up? My husband's out of state by the grandkids." Sure.
Wow. Outstanding.
Wow,
great connection. Thank you. And as is customary as well, I want to tell you something. You may not know this, not being here before, but I'm about to give you 100 grand. It's her favorite candy bar. My statement is, if you win one of these and you're not eating chocolate, I'm giving you the chance to give 100 grand away. So it's yours. Yeah, you keep it. Right. Exactly. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Please, yes.
My husband of 50+ years.
Awesome.
Wow.
That is fantastic.
Fantastic.
That's brownie points, and I love it. And that's worth 100 grand. Maybe 200 grand. I'll give you 100 grand here, right now. You can share it. We'll split it into two. Yes, exactly. So yesterday, one of our clients in Appleton said that, I'm grateful for my wife. And he goes, just so you know it's not for brownie points, she's not here. It was pretty funny. We all got a good laugh out of that one, too. The one thing that's very important to you, and you've heard it in what we've invested, both as Zach, Peter, myself, the team, is we love contributing to you guys. So one of the most important things that we do is bring these kind of programs. Today, I'm going to apologize to begin with. The program's a bit long because there's a ton of stuff going on. And I want to teach this all to you. So we're going to start with some of the most important things, like taxes.
Yay!
So I'm going to give, yes, exactly. There's a few of you here. Yes, there's a few of us here are going to be like, yes. We have a couple of our tax people here, and they're going to, no. The whole, it's okay. If you guys feel a little bit sleepy, go with it. I'm okay if you just lay your head down on the table for a moment. I won't disturb you, I promise. Okay? But we're going to go through some tax. A couple things on bull markets, corrections, behavior, you know the kind of things we've talked about. And kind of a three-legged stool I've been working on that I've kind of talked about it before, but we'll introduce more of this subject to you as well. And just a bunch of fun and laughing. So what I appreciate, too, is if it sounds like it may be funny, you guys are fantastic at laughing. We really appreciate it. Matter of fact, let's practice right now. So I did junior achievement 2 days ago. I got to spend an hour with 25 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds. Can you imagine me with the 8 and 9-year-olds? First of all, so my dad jokes come out right away. First thing, you guys heard about all the volcanoes erupting, right? Hawaii, Guatemala. Oh, well, what did one volcano say to the other volcano? I lava you. So, there's an official grandma, dad, mom joke you can tell the kids that's clean. So anyway, I'll bring up a few more at random, but I wanted to share that one with you. But I truly am grateful for you guys. You guys are you know my 4 essentials: faith, family, health, and business family. So for me, these are my essentials. I throw everything up against those. You guys are my business family. A lot of people have been asking me, why do you work so hard, Chris? You've achieved a bunch of this stuff. You got all this, you know, you played 20, 30 rounds of golf yet this year? No, I've played 9 holes twice. That's it, and that's okay. I love doing what I'm doing. And I'm working harder and more dedicated than ever. My family has brought it up to me, which is interesting. I'm like, no, I'm not going to. Oh, yeah, you know, you're right. And see right there, that's my daughter calling me right now. Tell me, Dad, what are you doing? So as we go through, though, the commitment of working for you and contributing in your lives in some meaningful way is wildly important. It keeps driving me. So you've seen us grow this incredible team. We're really blessed with that. Many of you have been with me for a very long time. I just want to let you know, I'm not stepping out of this. We're doing what's more and more important to. We want to get better and better at this game and contribute any way we can. So before we go on, I want to make sure I express my gratitude for your trust and allowing us to hopefully lead and help your family go through these different crazy VUCA times. Remember that word, VUCA? Volatile, uncertain, changing, and ambiguous. The C can also be challenging, right? That's what these times are, aren't they? Absolutely. So thank you very much. We're going to have a break, probably 30 or 45 minutes into the program. I'll ask you if you want to take it or not. We may just have just a quick one, and then we'll continue on with some of the technology and other fun stuff as well. So this one here, it's the Tax Cuts Job Act. It's the TCJ. You guys got that one right, the TCJ? So I've renamed it. It's the TAFAFEA. TAFAFEA. What does that mean? The Tax Advisor, Financial Advisor, Full Employment Act. Anytime these things come up, a sweeping change of tax law, you know what that means? Opportunity to educate our clients. So we love it. It's an interesting piece, but there's a lot going on with this. I'm going to go through, this is every detail. So this is the first of 50 slides on the details of the changes here. You guys laugh. It's pretty funny. Seriously, this adds like, so the tax law was 10.5 times longer than the Bible. Okay, was. It's approaching 14 times longer than the Bible now. Think about that. Has anybody memorized the entire Bible? We'd like to, but think about that. 14 times. That's just our tax code. So it's kind of crazy to look at. But here, we talked about a sweeping change. Ken, it was supposed to have what? It was going to be...
It was supposed to be on a postcard. Remember that whole promise?
Yeah. Yeah.
Supposed to send it on a postcard?
It's on a postcard, but the print is so small you need microfiche cameras to read it.
The postcard has 45 pages of schedule.
Exactly. It is a schedule with 45 pages behind it.
That's
yes.
right.
So it kept all 7 tax brackets. How many were there before? 7, right? Nothing changed on that. The rates came down a bit. Standard deductions increased. Now, we'll go through some more details as we go through slides, but I'm going to give you some highlights. What's important about this is how it affects you. There's some things we've done in the past we've talked to you about. We're going to keep talking to you about what we've realized in teaching other advisors and doing some educational programs that we have. Apparently, no advisors ever got the idea that actually helping people pay less in taxes was a service. I don't know about you guys, but it's something that's native to what we do. We found that a lot of advisors just don't even look at it, don't even care, never look at the return, nothing. And I think you'll find that different. So what we want to do is understand this, find experts that we can rely on when we have questions, both in advisors here and Ed Slot. State and local tax limitations. The child tax credit doubled. Mortgage interest deductions available for new mortgage decreased. Luckily, we don't live in California. Yeah, that's a big one. Alternative minimum tax increase. Medical expense deductions modified. Elimination of Affordable Care Act's individual mandate penalty. Lowered corporate tax rates. That's driving a ton. We'll talk about more. That is a massive, massive piece of this upturn, okay? You haven't even seen the full earnings ramifications yet, okay? Also, pass-through income will be taxed differently, and that's still up in the air. And the estate tax remains, but the exemption is now $11 million plus per person. Per couple, that's $22 million. So a few of you, whew, we escaped, right? It's like, 11 million, that's for the couple, right? No, it's 11 million per person. Okay, so the 17 people that applies to per year now. What's interesting, though, this is very interesting. A lot of our tax professionals in June here, June 7th, I think maybe tomorrow, are going to a program to talk about this tax law. But guess what the IRS hasn't done yet? They're not done defining this. They're not done defining this. So here's our tax law. Let's operate by it. But we're not going to define it yet because we're not quite sure. They don't even have a 1099 QCD, qualified charitable. So we'll talk more about that as we go along as well. So key highlights of this have gone up here. I'm going to let Ken give you some of the detail or Zach give you some of the detail, as we run through.
This is on. I haven't been upgraded to the personal mic yet. I have to put myself first at the podium. So.
You saw his picture was black and white. I considered having him behind a shade that make him look black and white.
I'm at 4 months in the Gentian team. I got to wait at 6 months. That's when I got the colored picture, the personal mic.
Yep. It's a whole ceremony.
But before I jump into taxes, I just wanted to go big myself. And so my first day here at Gentian was the last conference we had in this room on February 1st. So this is an extremely special place for me to reflect on the last 4 months. It's been full of learning, but it's been the fastest and the best 4 months of my entire life. And that's a lot contributed to you guys too. You guys have made it feel like such a warm welcome in appointments that I've been in with Chris and Ken, and also to everyone on the team. It's been an amazing 4 months, and I can't wait to see what is to come. So it's been a career change, but also a life change, and a life change for the better. So awesome. Very thankful to be here.
Thank you.
And so, without further ado, let's jump into some of the fun tax stuff. But Chris and Ken have been telling me that they've never received more questions or have seen more interest in taxes before until this year. Why is that? Well, this is the biggest tax overhaul in 32 years. And a quick 100 grand moment, who was the president responsible for that 32 years ago? Who said it first?
Ooh.
She has 100 grand, all right.
Someone else, though.
I heard like 20.
Who's that over here?
But yes, in
We're giving you
1986
$100 grand. You know, it may be illegal to give somebody
Cash.
100 grand cash, no 100 grand candy.
There you go.
100 grand candy, even better.
But in 1986, Ronald Reagan dropped the individual top tax bracket from 50% to 28% and dropped the corporate tax rate from 50% to 36%. So that's why this is the biggest change since then. Now on the individual side, we don't see as many changes as we did back then in 1986, but on the corporate side, part of the new deal in the new tax laws that he dropped corporate tax rates from 35% to 21%. We'll show you the effects that that has had on the market so far and some of the expectations going forward. But if we're looking at a married filing jointly bracket, we'll just start right at the top. 10% stayed exactly the same. 15% dropped down to 12%, 25% to 22, 28 to 24, 33 to 32, 35 stayed the same, and then 39.6 dropped to 37. So like I said, not as many drastic changes, but we'll show you on the next slide some of the charts and a little more visual to see the change. And so if we're looking at this chart, some of the numbers will be a little bit off from the screen before, and that's just because it's adding on the $24,000 standard deduction that came in this new tax law. And so there's two circles that'll pop up. And the circles are there because those represent some of the biggest opportunities of planning in this new tax law. And that's the reason for that being is the 12% to 22% jump is a huge potential to find a way to reduce our taxes to either bump down a tax bracket, and the same also at the 24% range where it jumps up to 32. Those are planning opportunities, and we love those. And also inside of the 22 to 24, there might not be as big a jumps, but those could be some great areas for potential Roth conversions, depending on your specific situation.
Absolutely.
And so long-term capital gains brackets, 0 to 77,000, 0% on capital gains, long-term. So anything 365 days or more, 0% if your taxable income is under 77,200. That's a big deal if you ever need money to look at that to make sure that you've held that position for 365 days or longer. Otherwise, it's added to your income for that year. Now, if you're between 77,201 to 479,000, it's 15%, and 479,000 plus is 20%. So it's something to be very aware of and to work with us, and that's part of the job that we do for you.
Awesome. Now, what's interesting is I like to go from here. I like to say, do you guys know that there's a way to pay 0 capital gains tax? Who might be interested in that? You want to catch somebody's attention? That'll do it, right? The key is, too, it may be an opportunity for gifting. If you have something with a massive capital gain, you could gift to a younger member of the family who has a lower income, have them sell it, pay 0, and gift the money back to you. And these are just little ideas that you may have thought of or not thought of before, but we like to give these to you because there are ways you want to pay the tax, you want the tax to get paid at the lowest possible bracket, and we're trying to avoid taxation because the difference between that and evasion is 10 years in the Gray Bar Hotel. Let's be clear on that one.
That's a good point. That's a good point. The next one here is Medicare Premiums. So this is, we have to be careful on this one as well because if we go over the income limits, now it's means tested. So the first 0 to 170,000, it's planned. But if we go above and beyond that, so if we start adding in Social Security benefits for both, we start adding in pensions that are out there. If we start doing these Roth conversion conversations that we talk about, and you have a larger IRA out there, there's a potential that we go over this. We have to be careful that we stay under this. Otherwise, over a 20-year time frame, we can pay up to $80,000 more than what we should be paying. So we have to pay attention to this one. Zach and the team, we've been creating a 594-point checklist. This is one of the things that are on that checklist that we go through. So not everything applies to everybody, but we do go through this checklist with everybody just to make sure that we're making sure that we're not getting into these extra premiums that we don't need to be paying just by some smart tax planning.
Yeah, Ken has a good point. By having a bigger team, what we've been able to do is we've had a ton of stuff we've done for you that you didn't know we did. So I actually had Zach put it together. It's 594 pages so long. If we also add in the tax stuff with that slot that we do, we're thinking it might be near what? 1,000 different pieces on the checklist? Now, not all will apply to you, but we want to let you know that they're there and we're doing this. This is completely foreign to most advisors. They approach it via investment, not the rest. So it's an interesting piece.
The next part, standard deductions. This has been doubled, right? So we got rid of the personal exemptions. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the standard deductions doubled from 2017 to 2018. A single person was at $6,350. Now we're at $12,000. A married couple was at $12,700. Now we're at $24,000. Okay? This makes a big difference when we're doing some tax planning. If you do it yourself, we're going to consult with you on this to make sure we're getting it right. If you work with a professional, we're going to work with that person as well. Because what's happening here is, Chris is going to mention this in a little bit, but if you were itemizing your taxes, and say we were itemizing to the tune of around $17,000, well, now we kind of get bumped up to that $24,000 limit. So we're gaining a little bit, but if you were, donating money to the church and gifting money to organizations that you feel strongly about and writing checks for that, that kind of gets absorbed now. We're not really getting the tax, deduction from that anymore. So that gets absorbed, and Chris is going to bring up a great idea with that one. Also to note, if you're 65 and older, there's an additional $1,300 deduction in this one per person. So if you're doing your own taxes, make sure you pick up on that one. That's $1,300 extra as far as the deduction goes. The exemptions, like I mentioned, they're gone. So that was $4,050 last year per person by being alive. That's what that was, really. They're gone, okay? What they've really done now is they've looked at the child tax credit. That's doubled. Chris mentioned that one right away. Went from $1,000 to $2,000. And now, finally, all of my kids are starting to be worth something now. Yeah. Totally joking.
It doesn't mean
totally
that.
joking. So they went from $1,000 to $2,000 per child. That was before, in 2017, there was a cap on that of $110,000. They get basically phased out at $110,000, right? They've relaxed that up to $400,000 now. That's going to include a lot more families out there that have the kiddos running around, able to get a tax credit, not a deduction, a tax credit for these little munchkins.
Because before, Ken used to have a joke where he'd say, kids are a joy, kids are something, but what was that? Remember that joke?
But they're still taxing, though. That's the thing, They're deductible, but they're taxing still. That's the thing. That's the thing. So,
depending on the day.
Exactly. The SALT, the state and local tax. This one's, it was unlimited before. Now it's capped at $10,000. So this is, again, if you're making $100,000, 5% in the state of Wisconsin, we're halfway there already. It's $5,000. Put in, your property taxes. Now again, we're already there. It's not that hard to get to $10,000. We've seen a couple scenarios where married couples have actually filed separately. I'm not saying this is a great idea. You need to talk to your tax professional. I've seen it in two cases where this made sense so far, where both of them got the state and local tax deduction up to the $10,000. So it doesn't happen very often, but it's a planning idea nonetheless. The mortgage interest deduction, it was for up to $1 million. Now it's $750,000. So if you have a mortgage of $750,000, you can deduct the interest. Well, I think what's more important here that may apply to more people in the room here is that the home equity line of credit is still deductible, which is nice. But it has to be used to substantiate the improvement of your home. They made it very clear in this rule right here. Before, you could kind of take money out, refinance your home, have a home equity line of credit, build, have a pool, type of situation. Now it has to substantially improve the value of your home. How they're going to track this, it's yet to be determined. But again, it's some differentiating rules there.
I think they came up with a new government agency called the Home Equity Line Police.
Yeah,
it's a new agency. They're going to fund it, just so you know.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's part of the Jobs Act, right, yes. We're creating more jobs. So this is interesting. Now, here's something that's going to change the way that we start to look at charitable contributions. Now, there's a couple qualifications to this. We might start doing more discussions about low basis items and giving those to charity. We've talked about those before. Talking about some ways to leave money to charity through your IRA, we've talked a bit about before. But this one is a very important one. There's something called a qualified charitable distribution. Now, let me set that up. In order to do one of these, has anybody ever heard of the required minimum distribution? That's the government, you've had your money too long in there, you need to take it out act. Okay? You've had it too long, we want our taxes back. So the government's a part of your IRA. So with the required minimum distributions, you have to take out the beginning year 127.4, about 3.46%. Now, what they've also allowed is this qualified charitable distribution. Very interestingly, you can now give this money directly to a charity. You can't take it and then give it. You have to send it directly from your IRA account to the charity, okay? It can be monthly, but more likely it should be once a year. Probably applies best over $500,000 or over $500 categories. Probably not on the $25 checks when the police call and you just want to make sure you get out of that speeding ticket. But what's interesting about this one, I said that one for you, Tim. When you look at this one here, what's important about the QCDs, different than required minimum distributions, you have to be 70 1/2 or older on the day you do it. It's not in a year which you turn 70 1/2, and that's a distinct difference. So in other words, you turn 70 1/2 in June. So that year, you have to take a required distribution. However, if you're doing this in March of that year, before your birthday, before your 70 1/2 birthday, you can't do it. It's disqualified. So you have to do it after your birthday in that year, which is kind of an interesting piece. That's a bit different. But what this can do is, remember Ken was talking about the new $24,000 standard deduction? Well, let's say I had a $14,000 I was able to write off, and I'm going to give another $2,000. Well, I'm at $16,000, but the standard deduction is $24,000. I get no benefit, right? How about this? How about if we allow you to take $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, get ourselves up to that limit, and all $10,000 of that will be set aside. It's given to the charity. It's not included on your income. If you're in the 22% tax bracket, you're now saving an additional, if it's a $10,000 gift, $2,200 that you wouldn't have got if you did it the old way. Is that of interest to anyone? We think it's huge. We've done these calculations. Also, chunking charitable gifting into a donor-advised fund. So take 5 years worth of gifts. If they don't qualify, put them in 1 year so it qualifies a single year. And with a donor-advised fund, you can just gift it over the next 5 years. You'll take your deduction in a single year, and you'll gift it over the next 5 years. So there's a bunch of ideas here that are going to impact the way we look at charitable giving. And you guys are super charitable. We love that part, but I want to bring these up to you now because the tax laws are changing, and they can benefit us dramatically. I'm not so concerned here with some of the different pieces, the mortgage laws. That's interesting, right? But some of these will dramatically impact what we do and what we've talked about. Any questions? Good. Now we're really heading into tax law. We're going to dive deep now. Please.
On that, it won't show as our, when we get our income tax statement, will it show as income?
It's a good question.
Please.
When we get our income tax statement, our 1099, you actually will get a 1099, but we need to let you know if you're doing your taxes, and you need to let your accountant know that you did a QCD, because there is no 1099 QCD yet. There's nothing that lists it. So it'll show, and some people make the mistake of actually including in their income even when they gave it to a charity. So your accountant, or in your case, I know you're going to have your tax preparer will know this. We'll send something to them. You'll get something saying they gave $12,000 to these organizations. Do not include this.
Well, usually, you donate to a charity will have you receive that donation when you pay back to the tax authority.
Yes, so if your charity gives you a receipt for it, that's another way. But you got to be careful because you're going to get a 1099 from us. You're going to get a 1099, and it'll still, for the full amount, it'll still show taxable. And I have Lori here as well. She also is, go ahead, yeah.
So my question is, will that 1099 show
Yeah.
that 1099 show the full amount on box 1, and then box 2 would be the taxable amount? Will box 2 be
It'll be this.
adjusted for the QCD?
No, it will not be. There's nothing yet the government's given. So it will not be adjusted for the QCD because the government has not yet given guidance on how to do it. They've allowed this for 7 years. A lot of you in here have done these. We were on the forefront of doing some of this planning. A lot of you have done it. The government, 1 year, passed this in January after the tax year that it applied. How do you plan for a year when the year ends and you can't even do this? I had a client, one client did it that year. He goes, well, they're probably going to pass it. He was lucky they did. Seriously, I go, hey, it's January 17th. Guess what, Don? They did that. Oh, he said. So it worked out. But this is a dramatic piece. This is an interesting part. We'll talk more individually because each one of you is going to probably be important. Peter.
Yeah, so what Carol mentioned, we're keeping a list of the offices who's already done the QCD.
Yes.
We plan on doing one this year. You're on that list. If you have your tax advisor information, they're also on that list.
Yes.
We'll be sending a reminder email and letter out before the end of the year to you and your tax advisor, and we'll send one right before tax time.
Yeah, because the worst thing would be to do this, to make all this effort and do this, and then pay taxes on it anyway. 50 to 70%, when it's this ambiguous, 50 to 70% of America is going to do it completely wrong. They're going to give it, that's great, but they're not going to get the benefit because they do not understand this. Okay? Because you've taken your tax person, boom, oh, I don't know, they just take 1099. Okay? Is that helpful? We find there's a ton of this great stuff. We're not going to go to every detail of all these, but that was a very important one. Ah, this is a good one. Anybody have a 529 plan they have set up for kids or grandkids? I know you do, so you don't have to raise your hand, but yes, right? There's a change in that. Remember, it was for post-secondary education? Guess what happened this year? Up to $10,000 now per year can be used for kindergarten, grade school, pre-K4, middle school, and high school. And in Milwaukee, there's plenty of schools that have that tuition. Now, as Ken mentioned to me before, it's for tuition only. So I think you said something about like ACT?
Yeah, we got a question from a client saying, can we use this for ACT prep? And the answer is we don't think so. We're kind of saying no to that. If the ACT prep was associated with the school and like the curriculum, I think that would probably be okay.
Yes.
But as a standalone item, probably not, because it's for tuition only.
Yes.
It's a real caveat there.
So this is something you can pay directly to school. That changes things. You know, I've got a friend who's in another state in New Jersey, and their grade school costs $33,000 a year per kid. So would this be beneficial? Tax-free growth, tax-free distributions? Yes. So again, these are things that may affect you. You can tell your kids, you know, for your grandkids and all as well, these are very important. This does not apply to college, right? It already did apply to college. That's what it was made for in the 529. So 529 could be full distribution for college, and it includes, this is a big change too, was it includes now computers. It didn't include computer and computer material before, now it does. So there's some good stuff, yeah, because, but for a long time it didn't. We're thinking, well, why not? Remember too, I think this is one thing Ken ran into. Distributions for a 529 plan need to happen in the year that you incur expenses.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a technical one here, where, so for example, if you don't pay the university directly, right, that's the best way to do it, right? But if you decide to buy something and you have that receipt, you have to get the reimbursement from the 529 plan that calendar year. It cannot drag over to like January, February of the next year. So if you do have that receipt, reimburse it and move on right away. Yeah. It's a good point. It's a good piece. This one's a good one. So who here knows a child under the age of 18 in the state of Wisconsin? A lot of you, right? So some of you know about this one. Some of you may not know about this one. Wisconsin is offering a $100 credit, basically, for any child under the age of 18 as of last year. Okay? So again, here come the kiddos again. This is starting to work out, all right?
Yeah.
What's that?
Ken's seeing checks.
Yeah, this is great. I'm going to have some more kids, I think. No. Just joking. All right. The deadline to apply this one is July 2nd. So we're approaching that. We're a month away or so. What we're going to do as a team, we're going to send you a lot of the links that we talked about today. We're going to send a follow-up email after this program. And this one's going to be on there. So if you haven't done it already, or you know someone or another family, make sure they do it. It's free money that's out there. They should be taking advantage of this. If not, I'll help them claim that one, okay? All right. So we got the Wisconsin Child Tax Credit. Areas we specialize in. This is a good one. A lot of you have been with us for a long time. You've been with Chris for a while, myself for a while. You kind of get the idea of what we do for you. But if I'm out in the public, and some of our clients have said this as well, you're a financial advisor. What do you really do, right? I mean, it's kind of an ambiguous thing that we do. It's kind of this novelty thing, right? Well, here's a couple areas: retirement planning, tax planning, estate planning, and investment planning. I'll give you a quick story of what we're working on right now with a client. Client is 62 years old. The question is, should we take Social Security? All right? So he has a personal account, the Roth IRAs, the traditional IRAs, all the three buckets that a good financial plan is made up of, right? So the question is that the personal account distributes money every single year. And I was talking to one of our tax partners on this one last night, is that distributes capital gains and dividends, right? We can't stop that. That's going to happen. That's considered income in all this when we're trying to figure out the Affordable Care Act on this one, right? So that's a situation where before 65, before Medicare, there's tables. So as a couple, it goes up to $65,000 of income, okay? So this account's pretty much giving out about $50-some thousand of income. The question, he asked me the question, should I turn Social Security on? And the answer is no. Why? Because he's paying literally 68 cents per month for health insurance right now. If we go over this threshold of 65,000, guess what happens? We walk off a cliff, right? And now the health insurance premiums become $17,000 per year. So of a $20-some thousand benefit, we have to give virtually 90% of it back in health insurance premiums. So these are the little things that we do. We think they're kind of big. I don't think a lot of advisors are talking about this stuff. But these are the areas we talk about Social Security optimization, maximization, healthcare planning, Medicare planning. These are the things that sometimes we forget to tell you that we're doing for you because you've been with us for a while now. But some of the new retirees and the retirees that are about to happen, they're a little unsure about what exactly is how we specialize in this, what we call the second half of the game. The distribution phase that a lot of you are in right now, that's the second half of the game. We're not accumulating money anymore, now we're distributing money. So it's an important piece I just wanted to bring up to you to make sure that we're aware of all those areas.
Good. What Ken is emphasizing too, we just did a program at Concordia University. It's just down the street from us where our office is. And we did some talk about tax, how to keep the money that you have in retirement income from tax. It's just native stuff you do. Once we start layering in Social Security's taxable, not taxable, Medicare premiums might go up or not. The tax laws change. You can have zero capital gains. I mean, I'm going through a litany of this 5, 6, 7, 8 things that are native to us. The looks were just like, they've had an advisor for 20 years and never talked about this. That was the comments we're getting. Is this all really true? So they never thought about how to keep most of my income. It's crazy. It's crazy. But that was one thing they brought that up for Ken too. So a couple clients brought that piece up. Now, this is fun stuff, right? Another thing we do is the behavioral finance. This is extremely important because your mindset is one of the most important things that you have out there. Gratitude, right now, if you're thinking, Chris, this is tax, it's getting kind of long, write down a couple of happy thoughts. The behavioral finance I find a lot of fun because I've lived with a lot of you for 20+ years. Some of you have been clients of mine through the correction the first time in 2000, the correction in 08, and it's really awesome to see as we've gotten through this. You've trusted us to stay in, and now we're benefiting from that as well. Behavioral finance is very important because what affects your mindset? It's the people in your life, it's your home and workplace environment, and the news you watch. Now, I will give one exemption because I know none of you watch the media anymore. So my exemption is if you want to pick up the issue of Forbes to look to see who's on the list for the best advisors in the state, skip the top 9, jump to 10, and hopefully that's your number 1. So it's kind of funny, but I give that. So here, my mom gets this issue. She gets the cover, and she goes, it's a guy in a hoodie, and it says, cryptocurrencies billionaires. Are you a billionaire? Are you a cryptocurrency? She didn't say that. It's a pretty funny one, though. But coming back to this, let me talk about a couple of different things here. Has how we get media changed? It has. Let me bring up one sample. We're talking about gratitude before, right? How would it be if our Commander-in-Chief presently started out a tweet like this? Hey, I really want to say, I'm grateful for everything you have. I'm sorry for the way I said this before, but what I'd like to say is.
Well, if that ever happened, we know his Twitter account was hacked. Like, hands down, hacked, right?
Yeah, but
no questions asked.
That's a good point. How might that change the conversation? It would change the conversation tremendously. It shows some humility and some gratitude. But a couple of different things. This is a very, very, very interesting piece. You won't be able to see all this, but this is the internet in 60 seconds. So to many of you, when we first started our relationship, Al Gore had just invented the internet. So 20 years later, this is 60 seconds of the internet. Listen to this. In 60 seconds, people watch 69,444 hours of Netflix per 60 seconds, per minute. In 1 minute, there's 700,000 Facebook logins, 150 million emails sent in 1 minute, 1,389 Uber rides, $203,000 in purchases on Amazon per minute. So you go tweets, 347,000. The president's responsible for about 1% of that.
I was going to say half.
Half. It could be half. Yes, right. Exactly. 527,000 photos shared per minute. How many minutes are there in an hour? 60, right? That's just in you start multiplying these by factors and it's unbelievable. So what's interesting about this, Google searches, 2.4 million Google searches per minute. You know what that says? Every time that happens, cha-ching, it's a paid search. So one of my relation, Estella, is actually a person at Google, and she's in charge of monetization. So I asked her about this. She loves search. My brother-in-law just retired from Facebook, and what's interesting is he says, at Facebook, they know what they're doing. It's unspoken, though. It's the 8 million pound elephant in the room. Right now, people spend 24.4 hours per week on Facebook. On average. None of you, because you'll never tell us, right? But that browsing, that fly on the wall, and what we've seen is some dramatic social issues because of it. Now, but here's what's interesting. You're seeing this 200 or 20 million hours of message, 38,000 hours of music, all this stuff, Instagram posts and all, stuff that we haven't even seen. When we met first, none of this existed. None of this existed. This has all happened in the last 10, nascent in the 20 years. This is how news is now consumed. True or untrue? So, is the world changing faster than we've ever seen it change? Do we think it's important that I get to go with some of these people and talk about the technology and how it impacts humanity and your families? We do this. We're blessed to be able to do it. But this has changed everything. So, you're just not bombarded by constant...
I think an interesting piece that I think you should tell a story on is the Steve Jobs. And what his quote was right before he passed away on the iPad. I think you should tell that story. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah, so Steve, one of my good friends, by the way, got to teach Steve Jobs to fish. My friend was 8 years old. He doesn't tell people this story. I go, you got to tell people that you knew Steve Jobs. He goes, no, I just don't like to tell that. He got to hang out with him. His father and Steve were good friends. The guy's from Disney, and he loved it. Anyway, they were asking Steve before he passed away, and this is very common in Silicon Valley. So you're the inventor of the iPad. The iPad's just about to come out in this new version of it. And they, so your kids, you know, they're really excited to use this. And I goes, oh, no. No, we limit my kids' screen time because it's not good for their health.
Yeah. The inventor.
The inventor of the iPad. There should be a little warning on the bottom that says, you know, careful. You could be on this for hours and not even know it.
A Surgeon General warning or something?
Yeah. But it's true across Silicon Valley. Most Silicon Valley executives do limit their screen time for their own children. Yet they create this for us. Okay? So be careful when we're... So you've seen constantly negative news, focus on extremes. You guys have seen those before, right? You can watch those. It's not just those anymore. It used to be 3 channels, was ABC. But here, interestingly, the headlines, and I used to call it, one of my good friends, Nick Murray, he's one of our 50-year CFPs. He's a great teacher to all of us. He calls this financial pornography. Okay? Why? Because you'll see on here, the new stock market fears the signs that a period of harmonious global growth is crumbling. This is, by the way, this is just 10 days of headlines. You're going to find how to get out of the way of a bubble bursting for stocks. Here's one sample. Yesterday, Morgan Stanley, or 2 days ago, Morgan Stanley told all their advisors to tell all their clients that we're in a bear market. Do you know what the definition of a bear market is generally? It's a 20% correction. We're down about 8, maybe 10% if you counted it, you know, at the bottom of that correction. But he calls it, it's a new bear market. It's a rolling bear market, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, this is 7,000 advisors telling all their clients this. This is just not true. So it's a wonder that anybody can be positive with some of this stuff. But you go through it. I mean, Gartman, is the bull market ending? Should we brace for volatility? Jeremy Grantham forecasts a rough 7 years for bonds and stocks. By the way, he forecast a rough 7 years for bonds and stocks 7 years ago as well. What's happened since? 150% up? So you got to be careful sometimes with some of the executives. There's 15 or 16. I sent one to Nick Murray just the other day. I sent this Nick the one about we were just talking about from Morgan Stanley, and he said, what was it? What was the word he said? Do you remember?
Transcendently bizarre.
Transcendently bizarre.
What does that even mean?
I had to look up transcendence. What do you even mean by this, Nick? He's got big words, and I think they're funny. So, taking a look at this, it's bull and bear markets. We'll just get a real kind of anatomy of it. When we were in Washington, D.C., we were very blessed to be able to see Andy Friedman. If you ever watch any of the Wall Street weeks, or not the Wall Street, the political shows, he's on it very commonly. He's like one of the top guys in Washington, D.C. We have a benefit of getting to see him every time we're there. What's really interesting is he also called the election for 2016. 96% chance that Hillary was going to win. So sometimes the predictability is not always quite there. Now, he's phenomenal with his policy and all. That was just something he went off on the side of. But really, of the couple-hour talk that he gave, the three things that are very important concerns: inflation, with all this free money and all the money floating around, people are buying stuff. Also, jobs. Have you seen what happened? We're at 3.6% unemployment. My economist, here's how we want to be, F. Abraham, taught me in University of Northern Iowa, anything under 5% employment is called full employment. 3% or 3.5% unemployment was called unemployable. Try to hire somebody right now. You'll notice very few applications, and people, well, I'll do this so that I can get my benefits. It's an interesting key, for unemployment. But inflation is a big one, as wages and other things might go up. That's not happening yet, though. Trade policy, tariffs, other things as well. Those are big items you guys probably have heard about before. Sanctions we're putting on each other, and that those go into an all-out trade war. And then administration unpredictability, which we've talked about. It's hard to even keep maybe the existing cabinet together sometimes. It's on the same ideas. So these are three very big concerns that he had. These are things we're taking into account. I didn't want to go through his whole program, but those are really the three takeaways from his.
This is a good one. So how does the investor evolve, if you will, like the secular bull market? So bull markets go up, bear markets go down, right? I think we know that. But here, the aftershock and rebuilding. So imagine 2008, 2009, March of 2009, that was the bottom of the market. Most people feel despondent. Most people feel depressed. Most people feel, is this really happening to me? I can't take any more. I'm out, right? That's really the bottom of the market. When someone feels that way, that's probably the bottom, right? That's probably it. But what happens after that, then we have a little bit of hope. We have a little bit of, reality coming. The markets are going back up, right? So that's what's happening right now. We have a little bit of faith. But we have this guarded optimism right now. So a lot of people think that we've been in this bull market for 10 years. We don't think so. And some of the economists we listen to, Jeff saw it at Raymond James, doesn't think so either. We think we've been in this for about 4 or 5 years now, maybe 6 years, right? Max. But what's happening here is guarded optimism. Why do we know that? Because we meet with you. And a lot of you tell us, hey, what do you guys think the next shoe is to drop? Right? We're hearing these questions from you guys, other investors out there as well. So we're not quite sure that, we don't believe it yet, right? We still have this optimism that's going to keep going up, but we're guarded about it right now, right? That's what's happening right now. And it's kind of funny because the next stage is enthusiasm, then exuberance. You know what's going to happen in about 9 months from now? Is that March of 2009 was the absolute bottom of the market, right? You know what's going to happen in next year, in March of 2019? That 10-year number of the financial returns of the market are going to look really, really good. Because the 2008, 2009 is going to be gone, right? So now the average for the stock market is going to look like more like 10, 11% per year rather than 3 or 4%. So what are people going to do at the grocery store? They're going to pick up Money Magazine, start paging through this. They're like, wow, 10, 11%, that's pretty good. I should probably get some of that. That's what's going to happen. That's where we get into this enthusiasm and exuberance, Mark. So we're getting to that. We're not there yet. If you look at what's happened in the last 5 years, companies have bought back their stock. It isn't investors like you and me coming back to the table yet. Just recently, Peter sent a text out to us last night, CNN Money. In May, there was $201 billion of corporate buybacks. So if there's less shares out there, the prices are going up. That's what we've seen in the last 5 years. We've yet to see the investor come back if they're not invested yet. I know most of you guys are invested, which is great. It's part of our education that we do. But when they come back and they be invested, watch the markets, what's going to happen then. Some of this money is going to be invested. That's the whole enthusiasm and exuberance stage we've yet to see. Yeah. So that's the secular bull market there.
No, Ken, that's a great point. Here's another thing, interesting fact. The Russell 5000, it's the all market index, used to have 7,600 companies in it. Today, it has around 3,600 companies in it. So if the pool is smaller when capital comes back in, there's fewer companies to buy. What happens if we get the same demand with fewer companies? That's basic economics. Prices rise.
Absolutely.
So we're just showing you the case for this may not be done yet. And where we are, I think Ken likes to, we're adding perspective.
Absolutely. You bet.
So the last two are pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. You have the I thought we were done there.
No, sorry.
Unreality, unreality, and then the cold water and disillusionment. I mean, that's like, you know, hey, how many zeros are in a billion? Because I think my 401k is going to go there. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen people stop working to day trade the market yet.
Right.
We haven't seen that yet. We've seen that, remember back in 98, 99, and we started to see that, and guess what happened? And we saw a temporary correction there and also a recession. We haven't seen people quit their day jobs to day trade yet.
And I heard the stories of it. I was at Kimberly-Clark when that happened. People were leaving. I'm going to take this 401k. Unfortunately, 5 years, and actually 2 years later, two of the people that I knew directly were going to do it when we met because they thought they were smarter than all of us, you guys included, had come back and had to go back to work. Lost every bit of it. Every bit of $500,000.
Absolutely.
So it's a really good point. I agree with that as well.
So what kills a bull market? This is pretty funny. So we think we're pretty funny. I don't think we are, but we think we are. A lot of you send us jokes as well. I'll never forget this one. This had to be about 2009, 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. A client who's in this room right now thinks he's pretty funny too. And so he actually sent me a comic. Well, I'm going to show a comic in a little bit here. In 2011, there was a financial advisor sitting at the table and a newly retired couple sitting on the other side of the table, right? And the couple's talking to the financial advisor, and the couple's like, well, I thought the plan was for me to stop working, not my investments. I was like, that was pretty funny. You know who you are in the room. I was like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That one's pretty funny. Here's another good one. So what kills a bull market? Look at the bulls are at the top, and all the bears that are down here. Remember bear markets? They think the markets are going to go down. The top. Here's the top. This is the top. This is the top. Look at, they're all down here, and the bulls are up there being, you silly bears. Look at how far we are up there. So that's always a fun one there.
It is kind of funny.
Little humor.
You get it like in a Lane Gazelle. You know who's going to call the top? The person who called it 364 times incorrectly that year. I've seen it. We've studied it. You've lived it as well. That's pretty funny. I like this one.
That's a good one.
So what kills a bull market? Global growth, and this is important. This is so if one of your friends are coming up, we'll give you this slide to talk with them. Actually, you can tell them, well, actually, global growth would have to decelerate, but it's not. What else? Wages inflation would have to surge. They're not. The Fed would have to tighten monetary policy significantly. The ECB would have to tighten policy substantially. They aren't. Credit growth would have to be surging. It's not. Now, credit growth. Watch your mailboxes. When you start getting more credit applications, you start getting more take-a-home equity, you start getting these, you'll start to see credit surge. Banks are back like in the late 90s or probably mid to early 2000s, which was, hey, here's some money. Take it. Do something with it. Okay? Corporate animal spirits, this is kind of funny, would have to be taking off. They're not. Equities would have to be expensive relative to bonds. They're not. I'll tell you that in a moment. Investors would have to be euphoric about equities. Who do you know is euphoric about equities? Are you pointing at me? Did somebody just point at me? I'm not euphoric. I'm optimistic. That's pretty funny. We believe, and this is from Jeff Stott, the secular bull market has years to run. Now, the first inning is over, and that's where Ken was just talking about. The second inning is where people start to catch on to this. This is going to happen in probably the next 3 to 5 years, and that's a pretty significant time frame. Here's this interesting piece. Classic signs of recession. You've lived some of these, not maybe this one as much. Back in the Great Depression, bank credit was 20.9%. Who here would want a bond at 20.9%? Guaranteed by the federal government. I would. I'll take it, right? Inflation back in the 80s was 14.8%. You remember your mortgage back then? Yeah. How many times did you refinance since then? Like every year, 2 or 3? Great to be a mortgage broker at that time. How about valuation in the 2000s? The market was 33.8. Now here's an interesting piece. We just had the best quarter of earnings since when, Zach? Since 1994. We're up 24.4% in earnings. So what did the market do this quarter? It dropped, right? It went from 19.1 price to earnings ratio to 16.9. You know what I'm doing? Woo! Awesome. You know why? Because I know what's going to happen. Bull market's average PEs is 24. Bull market average PE is 24. We're at 16.9. I'm not saying it's going right there, but there's room. The ingredients are there. What happened to household income to debt ratio? It was 132%. None of these factors are apparent right now. None of them are surging. Okay? Are there other issues? Sure, we can talk about those, but these are classic bull market killers, if you will. This one you've seen before. Ken was talking about this, the beginning two sectors where nobody believes it. Disillusionment, 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 leading to people starting to go, yeah, maybe I should get some of that. Same thing in the night. Maybe I should get some of that. Look at where we are in this. If you study charts, so I think it was Mark Twain who said, history doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it rhymes. That's this, okay? What's driving this today? In 2000, remember that internet 60 seconds? That internet didn't really exist in a large format during this bull market. At the end of it, it sort of began to show up. It was the idea of what it was. Now it's real. The idea of the microprocessor didn't really, it was invented in '68, but it really didn't take off here until the '80s. What's the internet doing now? It's maturing. It's changing the very businesses. The top 5 or 6 businesses in the world, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. They're all based on what? The internet. They don't own hard assets. They own online assets. They own your attention. Very interesting to watch. Anyway, so you see there may be some strong time to run here. Can stocks go higher? 1946 to 1969, this period right here. Market went up 655%. 1982 to 2000, it went up 1,400%. That was during the computer chip revolution. 2009 to 2017, so far it's up 315%. With an exponential technology like the internet that every 18 months, you're doubling the speed at which we operate our computers. Artificial intelligence will surprise you. It's going to have a direct effect on your families. We'll talk more about that. But you start to look at this. Does this have room to run? Well, just getting back to where some of these were. Yeah. Okay? Enough on that. That's all the positive. I'm going to stop. Now I'm going to let Ken talk about corrections.
Yeah, look at that. He talks about the positive stuff. I get to talk about the negative stuff. What's going on here? At least I have a mic, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Market corrections. I got you, Zach. Market corrections. Here they are. They're swift and visceral. They come without warning. Their length of stay is unknown. They're not pleasant when they're around. Some guys are like, that sounds like my in-laws. We're like, it could be. So here's a story. My wife is half Colombian. Her mother's obviously 100% Colombian. Colombians love to be around and they love their family, right? They love to eat, drink, kiss each other, and I'm married into this, right? So my in-laws live in Sheboygan. Okay, I live in Mequon. That's 40 minutes away. That's not like too far, right? Here's what Colombians do. I see them pull up. I'm like, oh, your parents are. That's pretty exciting, right? I see them carrying like some luggage with them. They're gonna be staying over for 3 or 4 nights, and they live 40 minutes away. That's what Colombians do. I love them. I told them that story many times. Yeah. But again, that's the in-law story that I have for you. So they leave scars on those who react poorly. They're temporary and necessary to go higher. They're vital to the long-term return. Here's why. People that own stocks in corrections, they freak out. They don't belong owning stocks. So what happens in that whole process? There's an exchange, right? There's an exchange from people that shouldn't own stocks to an exchange that people should own stocks. That's really what happens in the market corrections that we see. And they're essential to the long-term bull market as well. Going forward here, market drawdowns. What happens here? You remember last time, this is like the Andy Friedman story, right? So earlier this year, remember we had a chart up there that shows we've gone like 1,000 days or whatever the case may be without a 10% correction. You guys remember that chart? What happened the very next day? We went in to a 10% correction.
Literally.
So we're not going to talk about 10% corrections anymore, okay? No. I think we jinxed ourselves there. I thought that was kind of funny because everybody got their January statements, remember? Earlier this year, it was a nice gain, right? Then all of a sudden February came, March came. So again, we're not going to talk about market corrections too often. I think we jinxed ourselves. So market drawdowns, 20% drawdown. We can even talk about a 30% drawdown.
Right.
They happen during a market cycle that we're seeing right now, every 7 to 10 years. If we had $1 million portfolio and we try to dollarize a 20% correction, that's $200,000, right? So we temporarily have $800,000 before we go back up to the million point. Again, 2% corrections, we can see that on a Trump tweet on tariffs in a day, right? That used to be a major swing 30 years ago. Now we see it daily. So again, these are happening more and more and more.
Yep.
The annual end of the world. This is a good one. So Chris is going to put this up. So this is going back to 1980 when I was born, so that's a good year to start, right?
That's why we started it there.
To 2018, right? So this is the last, call it 30 years or so. And, well, 38 years actually. 38 years. And what we're seeing here is every single year, it's hard to see this, but the green bars are when the markets are up. When we add the measles in, the red dots, that shows intra-year, like throughout the year type of volatility. It is very, very common to see a market be up 9% at the end of the year, but at some point in time during that year, we were down 12% potentially. So we're going to see that volatility. What's been interesting in the last 3 years or so, we really haven't seen the volatility, have we? It really hasn't been there. And now this year, we've finally seen a little more volatility. So we're up about 2% for the year, but at some point in time, we were down 10, which we saw that. We went from January to February and March. That was that 10% temporary drawdown.
What's interesting about this as well is a lot of people say, God, I'd love to have something with no risk. The interesting thing is, what does risk equal? Risk equals return. So we got to be careful with that. There are no products out there that are magic, that take all the risk away, but you can get all the return. People will promise it. It's magic potion. Be careful with that. And that's what starts to happen. Bull markets breed bad behavior. Remember that. Okay? I'm not going to bring up any instances here because none of you have done it that I'm going to tell right now. But this is a 10% return per year. That's the cool thing about this. What's interesting is the S&P is at 2,700, 24,000. I think when a lot of us met, I was checking. I think the Dow was at like 3,500 when we met 20-some years ago. It's at 24,000. Look at this. That's crazy, isn't it? Born in 1942, the S&P was at 12. The S&P was at 12. This is now 2,715. It's 120 times up in your lifetime, not including dividends. Is there anything other than guarded optimism? That's our only realism. So what's interesting is, what happens when these things correct? 20%. What does that mean? Well, let me just highlight one. The Dow Jones goes down 4,891 points. That's more than the index was when we met, if you were back 20 years ago. But that's perspective. You're going, 4,800, it's the biggest point drop in the history. Well, you heard that earlier in January, right? But it wasn't the percentage drop because it's all relative. So we just like to bring up that perspective as well because these will be catastrophic media points. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds good. I learned these Nick Murray words, and I use transcendent and robust, and ask me exactly what it means. This is where I want to bring Zach up. He'll go through a couple slides on the market.
Thanks, Chris. So we talked a lot about what could happen, what would happen, and a couple of other things on that. But let's look what happened exactly since January 1 of 2017. So if we're looking at the lines there, the blue one, the one that's the highest, is emerging markets. And that went up 23.53%. The next line, the dark green, that is international large cap. And that is 17.44%. The lighter green is the S&P 500, which was 17.01. And then the red line was bonds, which was negative 1.97. And this is extremely important because each year, these three could be completely inverse and different. So that's why we owned all three, to capitalize on all of them. And so there's a couple important things to look at here. If you look at about 3/4 of the way through, Chris, right at about 12/22/2017, that's right when the new tax bill came out. And there was a ton of optimism. Oh, he fulfilled one of the promises that he decided in the part of the election. Market goes way up, and then it was kind of like, ooh, this is really high, and a little bit of reaction. But I just looked yesterday, at the end of market close, year to date, we're still up 2.81%. So even with the volatility that we had in January, where it seems like we're having a down 2018, we're actually up 2.81% on top of what happened last year. So it's extremely important to look at. And as Ken has mentioned several times, most of this upturn has been all because of companies buying their shares back. And so we're just starting to digest what these companies are doing. As Chris said, Since 1994, we haven't had earnings this good. So once that starts to flow in and people start to believe that and see how much money these companies are making based off the new tax bill, we could see some great things moving forward.
Absolutely.
And so most of you guys have seen this in a lot of your client reviews, but I think it's extremely important to stress. We see your portfolio as the blue line, but when you look at it, the world sees your market as the orange line. A bad Trump tweet goes down. Good Trump tweet goes up. Sum it off, sum it back on. But in all seriousness, it's extremely important to look at, and that's why we diversify and keep your long-term portfolio perspective in order. And we only see the blue line there for the long term.
So as we go through this, we have fabulous partners at what it is we do that help us out and will give us information to provide it to us in the kind of biteable, edible formats. Because I've been to a lot of these programs where if I can always bring something back, but when you start hearing like a Larry Shaw or a portfolio manager sit in front of you and talk about what they do, I actually do want to put my head on the table and take a rest. It's hard, it's great, it's awesome, it's great. But derivatives, all the synthetic, it's craziness. But who we have here today, for a couple of the sleeves of what we have Oppenheimer, a wonderful partner for us. And we have Nicole here. Nicole is a phenomenal resource to us and you guys. She will bring us the pertinent data, the pertinent people, the experts we need from the outside of the industry to talk about things we need to help you better as well. So what I'd like to do is bring her up to give her a couple of minutes to talk on something that we think is very important in our portfolio and how Oppenheimer helps you with that.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here. I know I've had the opportunity to speak to many of you in the past, and some of you I've had just an opportunity to meet today. But I'm Nicole Pretzel. I work with Oppenheimer Funds, and it's a pleasure to be a part of the Gentian Financial program today. And before I get going, I just wanted to ask a question, and I feel like we're all family here after the first part of this program. And so here's my question. It might be somewhat personal, but how many of you have actually brushed your teeth this morning? All right, I was hoping everyone would raise their hand. And the reason I ask this is because when we're talking about emerging markets, a lot of people have talked about emerging markets, and it's actually been in the context of, you know, the westernized lifestyle about brushing our teeth is now this new concept in some of these international or emerging economies. And it's beyond that. You know, we've heard those stories over the years where we have the accommodations of brushing our teeth, taking showers, all the daily hygiene. And, you know, it's actually still going on. It's a huge growth story overseas in specific places like India, where they're only brushing on average, they're brushing their teeth 2 to 3 times a week. So you think about a company like Colgate, who actually went over to India and distributed their products, their toothpaste, over there and really helped with the oral hygiene growth epidemic. And now they don't even call it toothpaste, they call it Colgate. You know, that's what we've heard of emerging markets. That's really what it's been. But I want to talk to you about what's actually changing and what the emerging markets have transformed today, because it's a lot more complicated and a little bit more advanced than just the basic staple companies and the products. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with what an emerging market is, it's really, there's about 20 or more different countries that are growing faster than the rest of the world. Their growth rates tend to be higher. They have more advanced policies when it comes to government or social policies, and they're constantly improving. And a lot of the times they have unique economic drivers. And when you take a look at what's happened over the last 20 years, it's been very, very interesting. I have 3 different things up here from 1997 to the end of last year, talking about growth, talking about how many companies are out there in the marketplace, and then also about the liquidity or the actual size of the market. So for those of you who can't see these numbers, let's take a look at this. The whole world has a GDP, or how we measure the size of our economy. It's $7.5 trillion. 17% of that 20 years ago came from these emerging economies. Today, it's 33%. So that's a vast improvement. 20 years ago, a little over 8,000 companies that were listed on the international exchanges in these emerging economies. Now it's over 22,000 companies. 20 years ago, $1 trillion of size, liquidity-wise. Now it's over 15.2 trillion. Things have drastically changed. So this is beyond the toothpaste story and the analogy that I used earlier. But what are the headlines in the emerging markets? They have not been favorable. If you think back to years like 2013, 14, and 15, a lot of these emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, they were all in a recession. They had their bear markets, right? Well, the U.S. benefited from the bull markets. We saw big macroeconomic imbalances. We saw the commodities prices. Remember what oil did? It went from high 100s, kind of 120-ish, all the way down to 26 really quickly. That impacted this global economic backdrop. And we also had declining exports and imports from around the world. So it was very, very challenging. The last couple of years, however, we've seen stabilization. These economies have now come out of their recessions. They have had a lot more stable footing. The commodities market has actually stabilized, which has been great. And now oil's back up to about $70 a barrel or so, depending on the day. And we've seen a lot more of the recovery when it comes to exports and imports. What do we see going forward in the future? We see a lot of the same things that you've probably heard over time. We've seen growth statistics continue to improve. We see urbanization rates, people moving from the countryside into the cities. That continues to grow and be pretty prevalent. And we also see that consumption is going to be a big, big trend. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about what that looks like. And as we dive down into the future of emerging markets and some of the great trends, one of the most undervalued kind of concept that we've seen happen over time is the fact that people are actually having better lifestyles. So this global poverty statistic, if you go back to 1820, we had 95% of the whole entire world that was in poverty. It's just fascinating to see how far we've come since then. There was about, if you look at this line here, it's about a stretch of 6,000 years, and it really didn't do much. Then we've seen significant improvements, and now we actually have about 5% of the total world's population in poverty. It might feel different in pockets of our own communities, and we hear horrible stories out there, but on a grand scheme of things, there's been very positive momentum that's going on, and this is probably one of the most underappreciated things that are happening in these emerging economies and overall the whole world. And we have statistics coming out of many different sources saying by the year 2050, 50% of the whole entire world will actually be in middle class status. That's huge, right? Because we talked a little bit about growth before. And what happens when you're middle class? You tend to have more education because that gets you a better job. When you have a better job, you make more income, then you're able to consume. Hence the cycle continues and the consumption is a lot stronger and therefore it attributes to the growth. And just to show you some of this, the progress that has been made, take a look at the real wage growth. This is comparing on the far right side of this chart, you'll see the developed markets. That's the United States, that's Europe, that's Japan. Those are some of the major developed economies. Their wage growth over the last 10 years on an average has been 0.43%, less than 0.5%. Compared to the emerging economies, right? They're advancing their overall lifestyles and they're really becoming more educated and getting better jobs. And it's showing in the numbers, 5.92% wage growth on average over the last 10 years. That's significant. And you take a look at urbanization. Demographics is always going to be a really key part of this. And so to make sure you're with me here, I have a question. And I think you can get 100 grand for this if I'm not mistaken. What percentage of the whole entire world's population, that's 7 billion people, live in these emerging economies? Percentage of the population that live in these emerging economies? Someone said 85? Okay, in the back, 85? It's higher. Anyone else? 95? Okay, lower. Maybe everyone gets 100 grand? I don't know. You guys are pretty close. It's 87.3%. Of the world's population live in these emerging economies. And look at these changes, right? This wage growth is significant. This urbanization, going from the countryside into the urban cities, is much more significant in China, which is the second example here, than it is in the United States or Japan. The blue and the black graph is the difference between what's happened in 1990 and 2015. So there's a much bigger gap in that second example in China, and the first one in India, than the other two, which are the developed economies. So there's a lot of really good things that are actually happening in these emerging economies that allow us to say there's a lot of growth potential. And just because we might be talking a little bit more about what the cycle looks like in the United States and where we are now, doesn't mean that there aren't ways to actually continue to aid to growth of portfolios. And diversification does continue to be a big key concept of that. And being able to look at where the opportunities are going to be shifting, we think it's going to actually shift more to the international and specifically these emerging economies, because now they've gone through the recessions, they're stabilizing, and there's some phenomenal statistics that just a handful of them that I mentioned that really aid to the whole thesis of there's consistent growth and it's sustainable going forward. So for those of you who are investors with Oppenheimer, I know you perhaps have some exposure to our emerging market strategy. We want to thank you for that. Appreciate the time and attention to share a couple concepts. And it's just a pleasure to be a part of this event today, and I know you guys are in great hands, and I've had the opportunity to work with over 3,000 advisors in the state of Wisconsin, and I actually think we should vote Chris #1 in the state of Wisconsin, right? And Ken,
we
too.
might want to give a standing ovation for that.
But thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Good. So, there's going to be a moment for you who need to get up and leave or take a quick break as well, because last time we asked about this, is it time to take a break? We're going to take a quick 5 minutes. For those of you who need to go, thank you, but before you go, there's something very, very important here. The second portion of this program is going to be about 20 minutes. It's going to have the technology, some life-changing things we've just learned about science and technology at a couple of programs we're at, some of the different concepts we're going to go forward with, but before I go, I want to leave you with a question. Since 1985, about 2.5 billion NCAA brackets have been filled out. What percentage got the Sweet 16 right? I don't want to hear it now. I want you to go to the restroom, do whatever you do, but come back in 5 minutes, or if you don't come back, we will see you at our next program. Take 5 minutes. What's that? Do not Google it. So did you guys want to notice the authenticity of what we were doing here? Did anybody look on your Coke cans? There's Coach. There is Teammate. Start looking at what's in there. These are phenomenal. Don't look at the calories in the can. But you start looking at some of these nice pieces on here, it's kind of fun. So the authenticity of what we're doing, how it's happening, it's very important. One thing I want to say, and I think it was mentioned before when Nicole said this, one thing we create here is community. We have other people come in and say how proud they are to be able to present work with us, and it's amazing because you guys make this community wildly important to us. When you start talking to others at your table, you're going to notice people you know and like. They're friends you may not have met yet. That's what one of my clients said. I go, that's a really good point. So I want to come back because we gave you a question here. Since 1985, 2.5 billion NCAA brackets have been filled out. What percentage got the Sweet 16 right? If you Googled it, do not answer. Anybody want to fathom a guess? Okay, so that's a pretty good guess, but most people guessed 2 to 3%, so I didn't hear 0. You know why? Think about this. The first 2 rounds get us 0 people can get that right. Think about that statistically. Doesn't that seem like, natively, my first thought was, I don't know, Ken, what was your thought? I thought like 2 to 3%.
I was thinking 5-6% at the time, but
so was I.
But
they brought that up, and that was an absolutely amazing number.
Yeah.
0. So that was correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys got it. Think about that. That seems statistically impossible, but it's absolutely true. So we call this one How Advisors Add Value. What we want to do is we like to distill the complex and give it to you in bite-sized chunks. They may seem simple, but we operate on the wisdom on the other side of complexity. What that means is there's simple because you know nothing about it. You talk in simple terms. There's complex because you want to seem smart. And then there's wisdom, which is the discernment of all this crazy stuff into bite-sized chunks of wisdom. Again, you can say like, long-term markets go up. That's wisdom. Okay? So as we look at this, some of the different pieces we want to give to you are, what are those pieces of value that we look at? This is one. You guys here out there today, the passive investment argument. Well, geez, Chris, I hear this. After fees, the average manager can't beat the index. You heard this? Okay? How about lack of persistence? They can't predict performance. Therefore, you must go passive. This is John Bogle's, Vanguard statement. This is what's going on out there. So you must go passive, right? Wrong. Let me take a look at this. We want to dispel something, but first of all, I have a fact that's completely unrelated. Did you know the average University of North Carolina geography graduate earns well over $1 million more in lifetime income than those from other schools? So, if you have any children who are going into geography as a major, you might consider sending them to University of North Carolina. Over their lifetime, they make $1 million more bucks. You know why? Skews the averages. The average vertical leap for somebody from geography, no, I'm just kidding. So you look at this, he made billions of dollars, but you start to look at averages. I've told you this before. If I have one foot frozen in a bucket of ice, the other foot standing burning hot coals on a fire, and I'm not at a Tony Robbins seminar, on average, I'm pretty good, right? Be careful with averages, all right? This is kind of an interesting piece. So what I want to show you, and this dispels the myth. If you looked at active managers versus passive, okay, this is what's important. If you're looking at all managers together, this statement might be true. It's hard for the average to be beaten. However, if you take the bottom 25% out of those managers, the worst, and you just deal with the top 3/4, guess what happens? In many categories like large cap blend, US large cap value, you're going to find small cap very strongly, tremendously outperform indexes after their fees. So it's the playing field you have to look at. We've always looked at, now, there are some cases where, like for instance, we can't get into Oppenheimer's Developing Markets Fund unless we're on our platform because it's closed to outside investors. So in that case, if all the top funds are closed, we may want to choose an index. That's the best choice left available. But in this scenario, this is a big myth out there. John Bogle makes a ton of money on what? You would say the Vanguard Index 500. And you know what? Nope. Do you realize he makes most of his money, a very large portion of it, on the actively managed funds he has? Vanguard Wellington, all the different funds. It's amazing to look at. So you look at this person who's probably the leader in passive investment, and if you took statistics properly, you could completely dispel that. But everybody views it as fact, like the world is flat. Until they found it had curves and it actually went around. So these we like to look at because the same thing actually happens for the 5-year time frame. So the 5 and 10-year time frame are very similar on this. So it's some of those dispelled myths that we've always looked at. So how do we create portfolios? We look at what is, not what people are telling us. So my pastor said this the other day. We were talking about being on the board and other things, and he said, Chris, on the board we're all looking at something. We see this, this is what we see. Yeah, we agree, this is what we see. What do you see, Chris? Well, I see over here that this, and this is going on. He goes, you see something completely different looking at the same thing. Well, you want to do that. You want to look at this differently, right? So anyway, these are some of the pieces that we look at to say, how is this true? What might actually be true? And this is one of those.
I'd like to piggyback on this point a second here. So the S&P 500, right? You've heard of that before. It's a weighted average. I'm going to get a little technical with everybody right now. It's a weighted average. What does that mean? The largest companies make up the majority of the returns of the S&P 500. It's weighted, right? So shares times stock price, that gets your capitalization. So if you invest in money in the S&P 500, you're really investing in what has already been. So let me bring this to you guys and what we do for you. So at all of our review meetings or a rebalance meeting, we're taking a look at your portfolio. You see the pages up there. You see some red blocks and some green blocks on there, right? So the red stuff. So we're actually doing rebalancing for you. So instead of investing in what already has been, we're rebalancing it as what is about to be. We have no idea what's about to be, right? I mean, the future is unknown. But that's what we're doing for you guys on an everyday basis, is that whole rebalancing act is we're selling what already has done well into stuff that is about to be. That's exactly the opposite of what happens in the S&P 500 index.
Yeah. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google become the biggest stocks in the world. By the way, in 2010, who was it? In 2000, it was GE, It was ExxonMobil. I can go through a whole litany and list. They aren't in the top 10. It's quickly shifted in 18 years. It's amazing to watch. So that's a good point, Ken. Thank you. Thank you. Innovation. This is the kind of fun part. Now, one or two of you have signed on to Peter Diamandis' Abundance program just to follow the emails, which is fun. So if I bring up something here, pretend like you haven't seen it. Okay? What I want to tell you, this is what will change your family on a go-forward basis at an accelerated curve. Now, does anybody know how many times you can fold a piece of paper? Physically? How many times did you think? Anyone want to guess? Who said 7? Who said 7? You know that, though, didn't you, Gene? he knows that. So you think 8, 10, 15 times, right? So Gene in the back actually gets 100 grand because he also drove up here from Illinois.
Oh, nice.
But here's what's important. 7 times is what you can physically fold it because it's exponential. When you fold it, you've got 2 sides, 4 sides, 16 sides, as you go through. What's interesting about what's happening in technology is every time we double what the microprocessor is doing, it's exponential. So 49 times, if you could fold that paper, it'd be halfway from here to the sun. 50 times fold is from here to the sun. 103 folds, and you're across the entire universe. You think about that. Now, this is what's happening with our technology called the microprocessor. Quantum computing is going to change our lives. Molecular science, different sciences. I'm going to show you a few of these. But we are here to help lead your family so that your family isn't derailed by this. Your family knows this is coming and makes some intelligent decisions before it happens. This is what we do. So I want to show you a couple of these. A lot of our clients have told us this is a very important piece for us to see going forward. Anybody here heard of vertical farming? It happens here in Milwaukee if you read the paper a couple times, but it's in a little bit of a nascent form, kind of an early form. But here's vertical farming now coming out in Chicago, just as a sample. They're talking about putting this in Chicago and in Lake Michigan, on Lake Michigan. The average food you eat right now travels 1,500 miles before you consume it. What are the transportation costs for that? What if we could grow the fish you eat in the bottom of this, down here in the water? You could use the fish as fertilizer for the nutrients that you're going to grow up here. You could grow them 24/7 with perfect light, proper phytonutrients, no soil because you can spray the roots with the nutrients you need. You can have perfect food on a constant basis 24/7, 365 days a year with very little transportation costs. What does that do? What does that do to farming? What does that do to some of the basic things in the 1900s? This is changing. So you look at somebody, I'm going to buy 1,000 acres of farmland. Okay, be careful, because if this concept happens, what might that do? It may not change corn. It may. What might it do to California? We now have a perfect 24/7 environment you can grow in. That's just one. Let me give you a couple of others. And by the way, they have a vertical farm down in, I think it's down in the 3rd Ward here in Milwaukee, where they're growing fish and using the fish to do this. So they're actually doing this here, which is kind of interesting. What else is going on? They have the first 3D printed human cornea. There's 2 million or so people waiting for corneal transplants. Now, if we can do bioprinting of that your eye can actually be perfect with the cornea, it changes the game. One of my friends, Bob Hariri, who I have at the Abundance 360 program, is telling us placental stem cells, the throwaway, the afterbirth, are now the most incredible. Well, you should save it. You should get it frozen because they are literally the spring of life. So they will have within 2 years fully functioning 3D printed lungs available for transplant. Starting a company right now called Cellularity that's curing diseases we have with placental stem cells. So as you look at this as well, robotic skin. You've seen Terminator. You can shoot holes in Terminator and it self-repairs. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that is happening right now. Robotic skin that is self-healing. AR gloves. Augmented reality is allowing blind people who have sight impairment to see art that they have never seen before. So to some of our, I know we do a bunch of charity work, those are amazing. Amazon. Another word for Amazon, if you switch the letters around, would be called amazing, right? Amazon can now deliver to your trunk. Pops your trunk, puts it in, can't be stolen, unless your car is stolen. I guess they haven't thought about that piece yet, right? There's a bank in China operated by AI, artificial intelligence, and 100% robots. Not a single human being in it. And it's one of the fastest growing banks in China. Guess what? Have you heard of Flippy the robot? Flippy the robot in California makes hamburgers, 300 a day. People line up to get a hamburger made by Flippy. Think about that. So the networks now that are starting to use blockchain, you've heard of blockchain. Anybody heard of cryptocurrency? Yeah. What's behind cryptocurrency is blockchain. That's a technology that will change the world. Cryptocurrencies may be an offshoot of it, but there's a whole lot to go with that. They fell 80%, the classic technology, exuberance and fall. When you start looking at the blockchain behind it, the blockchain will radically change businesses as we know it that have to account for things. Okay? FDA approves is the first one. It's huge. How about if you go to a doctor, you submit your symptoms, there's no doctor there, but this artificial intelligence says, this is what you have. The FDA just approved the first artificially intelligent diagnostic. Now, your doctor can use that to work alongside of it to prescribe what should be done, but they can now, more accurately in some cases, provide diagnosis than us human beings. So the good news is, do we pair with this to become better humans, or do we fight with it and become adversaries? We don't want to do like our political system. We want to work man-machine interface is where the future is. Okay? So the last one is genetically, and I'm just reading this today. There's a genetically engineered superblood to battle cancer. A woman who has 4-stage cancer was prepared to die, she had said. They're getting new surgeries. In this case, it was a superblood to put in her system. 100% cured 2 years later. 100%. They're looking at using this for prostatectomies instead. All the different things that we do today surgically and robotically, potentially saying, wow, maybe we can just genetically turn that off. Now, it only works for 16% of people. But we can work on this 16, we can get your genetic code and find that for you it's perfect, for you it might be fatal. I found out broccoli is not good for me. Whew! Got to tell you what, that was a savior. I've been eating this all my life thinking, oh, I actually do like broccoli, but I did some testing and found out broccoli wasn't good for me. I love avocados. I've been thinking, oh, they're great for you. Guess what? For me, avocados are no good. No bueno. Turns out I'm Scandinavian. And there aren't many avocados in Scandinavia. Turns out lutefisk is also not my favorite. Give you a bit of an idea, though, of when you start doing some of this genetic testing, which I'll talk about in a minute. So what you're starting to see here, this is a cool one. It just came up. You guys have all heard of what's the single smallest, most durable, let's call it metal that we know of. Anybody know? Keith might. It's called graphene. I've talked about it before, right? Graphene, it's 9 times stronger than steel, 9 times lighter. They've come up with a form of graphene now 3D printed that is 99.8% air, yet as strong as steel. Think about that. So the scaffolding now we can print on such a bio scale that is as strong as steel, yet it's going to weigh 100 times or 90 times less. What will you do if you have a car or a driver or whatever you have? The first thing they put this stuff in, you know what the very first thing they put graphene in? Tennis rackets. I kid you not. I had Kevlar in my tennis racket when I was in college. That's so cool. It's a space-age material. They use it on the space shuttle and my tennis racket. They have graphene in tennis rackets now. Graphene as a substance is going to start to replace weight on things. So if your car weighed 78 times less, what might be your mileage? Are we concerned with mileage then? No, we're concerned that maybe the wind's going to blow it off the highway. It's a whole new set of possibilities. But this thinking becomes important. So how do we invest in it? How do our portfolio managers investment? Do they see this? Is there a way we take advantage of this? The answer is yes. A lot of this stuff is in pre-public format. But it's radically changing the companies that we own. So that's why we think this is wildly important for us to bring to you. Does anybody find this stuff fascinating? Yeah, shake your head or raise your hand if you do. Okay, good, because this is changing our landscape. And what I want to do is make sure I bring this to you. Here's why. There's a couple of different reasons. So, I told you my essentials, right? Faith, family, health, and business family. So let me ask you a question. This is an interesting, if anybody would like to do this kind of experiment, it's phenomenal. Without your mind, knowing who you are, where you are, and having memories of your friends, family, is any of this important? If you can't remember anything, you have no function in the mind, is any of this important? Okay, you don't have to answer yet. Without being healthy enough to appreciate this, is any of this important? Without having enough money to support yourself, what good is health in your mind? Now, if I ask you which one of these three is the most important, how might you answer that? Somebody says health, yes? Yes. There were people who say a mind is, because if I don't know, I don't care if I'm healthy, if I don't have a mind to know I'm not healthy. If I don't have enough money to be able to help with my health and wealth. Now, a lot of people in their lives spend all of their health attempting to get this. And then they hire somebody out there to manage this, and they spend all this money to manage this, forgetting about this and this. I've been fortunate, and you've told me over time, what's most important to you? What these things support. What true wealth ends up being is what your why is. It's your giving back. I've heard all the stories. It's your teaching, coaching, giving back. It's the organizations you're in. You guys are probably the single biggest productive, least paid people that I know. You give wisdom free. Oh, it's amazing. It's priceless. So as I look at this, I'm smart enough to know that, guess what? This supports your grandchildren. This supports your family. This supports the organizations. This supports helping underprivileged kids, helping get kids out of slavery in other countries. That's what this is all for. So don't get me wrong. We know this is an important part of it. But what we're going to do is we're very fortunate about being able to be in a couple of these programs that allow us to show you what true wealth is. And we're going to bring some other components if you'd like. So for instance, I'll give you a little self-disclosure, and my wife can vouch for this. About in February, actually in last year, November, I decided that, without health, and I'm a pretty stressful job and all, and I wasn't in horrible shape, I went to see a doctor, one of the top health doctors in the world. He happens to be in Dallas. What I did is I decided that I took a bunch of tests, decided and found what I could eat and couldn't eat, and it shocked us. Red meat, nope. Bread, nope. Sugar, nope. What else is there in life? Because I probably couldn't eat it. Okay? Yes to chicken, salmon that's wild caught. I mean, I just started looking at food as fuel now. It's going to be kale. It's going to be things I thought were horrible. Kale's pretty darn good, actually, if you have it right. I really love it. Blueberry smoothies, they're phenomenal. These are great things. But I know what my body needs. Now, I did a few other things, and you may have noticed I probably lost 25 pounds, not intentionally. I've lost that through just proper eating what my body wants, less swelling. My mind is back where it was probably when I was 25 to 30 years old. But I was beginning to get a bit of mental fog. At night, at times it'd be, I'm really tired. I have more energy than I've had in a very, very long time, more vitality. And the most important thing is that helped me realize, what phytonutrients do I need to have a stronger mind, to remember things, to come up with different ideas? So putting all this together, if I can help with both of these, I can then continue to be a wealth advisor for you, and I'm going to call it true wealth advisor. Everything that includes money and the rest of your life. This is stuff, though, hopefully it's beneficial to you. Many of you have said yes, but I want to bring this up to you because nobody is. Nobody's bringing this stuff up. You're going to see more and more people do it. When I started retirement 23 years ago, nobody did it. Everybody today is a what? A retirement advisor. I help people retire. Sure you do. With their investments. How about their whole picture? So that's an important piece. I didn't mean to go as far into that as I did, but hopefully, is that helpful? So if I can bring you stuff that can help you be stronger, sharper of mind, better health, I've got some people we can do that with through Empower Wealth, through Dr. Gladden. I'm going to bring those to you if you guys would like. You can consume it if you want. Don't get me wrong. I know that you've often come to us for this, but I know that these support the bigger picture. So you consume them if you like. We're going to start recording these things, sending them out, little pieces on it. But I really hope to contribute to your life in some meaningful way, and not just in this. Okay? Longevity and health, you've seen it. Healthcare, biohacking, biome, diet, bulletproof coffee, sleep, massive important. If you can get an extra half hour of sleep, watch your life change. Cryogenic therapy, I don't do that. Magic fairy light therapy, that's Ken. That's why he had to get me with the tutu joke.
Yeah, you got me back. You got me back. That's good.
Here's what's amazing. I was just on a podcast for Living Beyond 120. The key is Living Beyond 120. What the heck is that? When you were born today, actually, let's ask this question. Who here knows somebody who has lived to 100 years old? Anybody know? Most everybody here has a connection to somebody because you now have all seen people raise hands. You have a connection to somebody who knows somebody who's lived to 100. Do you know today, if you've lived to 100, your life expectancy in 1918 was 36. Because of what? The Spanish flu. 1917 and 1919, it was about 50. You've doubled your life expectancy. You're supposed to live to 50 and you're 100? Now think about this. My daughters, born a few years ago, were supposed to live to 81. Are we talking 162? We laugh at this, isn't that funny? But you thought when Willard Scott used to name the 100-year-olds in America, Betsy in Oklahoma City is 100 today. He could do that. And then he had to quit because now it's the fastest percentage growing portion of our population. Of all the 65-year-olds to have been on Earth, Ken Dykewald would say 2/3 of them are alive right now. We have a gerontocracy. That's kind of a fun word, like healthgevity, right? Healthgevity, what the heck is that? Longevity with health. Who here wants to live to 120 if you don't know who you are incontinent, and you're in a facility somewhere like Walbrook? None of us signed up for that, right? The opposite side of the equation, if you can feel like you were in your 50 when you're 90, if you have a mental picture, if you can share wisdom with your great-great-great-grandkids, you think that's going to be valuable to them? I'm going to tell you, it's the most valuable thing you're going to give to them. Money has a chance to hurt people. Wisdom, wealth, family, caring, community, those are the cures for what we've got going on right now. So anyhow, as you look at a lot of this longevity and health, it's phenomenal. But we're looking at saying, how can we get to some of these ages in a healthy way? This is what some of the doctors at the program have said. If you can live another 12 years, you've got it in the bag. We can start de-aging you pretty significantly. Pretty amazing. Anyway. Anybody here heard of Dr. Amen? Anybody watched public television? I did. I read his book. And here's one thing. Anybody here like cars? You're going, what is he talking about? I think he's gone crazy. You've got one vehicle that you get to choose. Matter of fact, this one you didn't get to choose. Your entire life. It's defined by this and this. So how many of you have studied a ton of stuff? You may have doctorates and all, but how many of you have studied what actually makes your mind tick? The nutrients it needs? What you should be doing with it, the sleep you need? Anybody studied that? No. This is one of the single most important things. We'll bring some ideas to you that will help with that. We've got a few different pieces, but as I started looking at it, it goes, man, these are fundamental. These are foundational to who we are. Let's keep these healthy. So multitasking equals multitaxing. I showed you the 60 seconds of the internet, right? Anybody had this argument with their spouse before? Multitasking. My wife is phenomenal at not multitasking, by the way. My wife, Deb, she is the most focused person. If she's on a phone call, if she's doing something, you cannot dissuade her from it. It's phenomenal. You mean it's like, yeah, what's that? Yeah, okay, yeah, oh, that's good. What did they say? You know. But I've noticed that when it's multitasking now, you got to be careful because the world is coming at us a thousand things a minute. Your parents had about 16 advertisements or decisions a day. You guys are 16,000 a day. When you drive down the highway, the freeway, the Coke can, everything has an advertisement on it. You're bombarded. You're overloaded. So 10 quick positivity trainers. You know what? Rather than having to write this down, we'll send this one out. Daily gratitude list. You guys have already done that one. That's great. So day 1. Tomorrow I will make a challenge to you. Day 2. It's called a Pringle. Just do one item of gratitude you write down tomorrow morning. You know why? You ever eaten a Pringle? Pringle? One has eaten one Pringle. Anybody here? That Pringle is, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I have my workout shoes right next to my bed. Why? Because if I put those on, there's a pretty good chance that if I go do one push-up, I'm going to do 25 or 30. Right? Just start. Create a meaningful life vision. That's a very important thing. John Glenn did this. Anybody know at 77, John Glenn went back into space? Remember that? All these young people were interviewing him. Oh, you know, geez, why are you doing this? It's a publicity stunt, whatnot. You know what John Glenn said? He goes, hey, if you've ever seen him, just so you know, I may be 77 years old, But that doesn't mean I don't have dreams. It's a great statement. We never have to stop dreaming. Acts of service, laughter as much as possible. That's like I like to tell jokes. Matter of fact, I'm going to do one right now. So, I did this one yesterday. The kids love it. Kids gave me some good ones. I can't tell them here because they're pretty funny. And so listen to them. Man, your kids are telling me this. Anyway, how do you make a squirrel like you? You act like a nut. So I said that I qualified. But the key is journaling, deep breathing practice, massage, visualizations, counting your blessings, like gratitude, and physical activity. These all seem in and of themselves evident, but until you're intentional about them and actually do them, you need a Pringle. What starts you on that? Okay? We'll give you more than this, but I wanted to give you a summary of it as well. What might this mean for you? If we can help in any way with longevity, I'm going to call it healthgivity. Living well into your hundreds, which is not going to be uncommon for you. I've talked to you and you laugh when I tell you, if it's a married couple sitting in my office at 65, one of you will be 95. And people, and they point at the other one. Every time. I kid you not. I can tell you what's going to happen. I've seen the script. We live it, right, Ken?
We do.
We see this every day. So we plan for you living into your hundreds. What might that mean? If you're healthy, lower withdrawal rates, longer compounding, working longer, second career, becoming an entrepreneur. What is it you want to do? You want to do another career for money? Do you want to just have fun with something? Family and social issues. What happens if you outlive all your friends? What happens if you outlive your children? Brings me to another joke. Had a client, this wasn't my client, it was one of my friend's clients. Walks up to the door because the guy couldn't come out to see him anymore. He goes, he's 95, his wife's 94, and he goes, well, Tom, it was to my friend Tom, he goes, we decided to get a divorce. It's like, what? You've been married for 70 years. You're getting a divorce? He said, yep, we're getting a divorce. We decided to wait until all the kids died. So sometimes in a joke there may be some reality. So I don't know why I thought that was appropriate, but anyway. So wait. Didn't I just help with this one? Number 4? Laughter. Anyway, sorry. So another exciting update. For some of you who've seen this, this is the portion of the program where I get to drone on and on. It's awesome. I enjoy it. We're putting a new building on here. Ken right now sits in the garage of our building. Small portion of the building. They added in 1962. Ken has decided that he no longer wants to sit in the garage, so I had to do something about it.
That's like a sweatshop, you know?
Yeah. No.
These working conditions.
What we've decided is to add the contribution. We're going to add about a 35 by 45 facility. We wanted to make it look like a barn, but Mequon said we couldn't quite do that, so we're making it look like a barn anyway. Barn-esque. But it's going to be about a 35 by 45 facility that has, as you look at it inside, a little fireplace at the end. It'll have tables we can sit around to get about 30 to 40 people in the environment for programs like this. We're going to record them. We're going to be able to webcast them. If you can't make it, if you're in Florida, you'll be able to see them. So it's going to be, we understand this need. We have to get by the SEC to get some of this stuff done because there's a lot of issues with recording things and who sees it, but we're getting past those. But we wanted to create this for contribution, for meaningful contribution and company with you. We want to create community around this. So by adding this, we're going to have some offices at the top of the building. We really want to create a unique space for you. So another exciting update is we've been growing. You've seen that. I want to continue to grow only intentionally if it serves you better. And that's my goal. We share the work we do now. We have a ton of great work, but I've got some great experts, and we share that. Why do I want to continue to commit to this? Because we have a team that can support it. If it was just me, we probably wouldn't have all you here. It'd be too much work to do all myself. I couldn't do it. But I got people who are great at this, and we share this as a team. And by the way, we have a unique team. So one of the things I'd actually like to do, if you could, help me by giving my team a hand because they are absolutely phenomenal. Please go ahead. So they are, a lot of this is you. A lot of the awards are you. A lot of the awards are them. A lot of the awards are them. So I want to make that absolutely apparent.
All right, here's the summary. So we've been together for almost 3 hours now. It's getting to be long, right? We're halfway done. All right, so here's the summary. We covered a lot today. So we'll open up for Q&A for a little while. If you have a few questions, we'll answer a few questions, and then we'll close the program out. So does anybody have any questions? I mean, we talked about behavioral finance. We talked about bull and bear market corrections. health, mind, health, and wealth, areas we specialize in. Is there any questions that come off the top of the mind right now? We'd be happy to answer them. If not, we can also take them offline as well.
Good.
After the program. Keith, yes.
Comment more than a question. Last time when we were here, you featured Peter B. Modest, and I went on his website, and I don't know if any of you interested in kind of watching technology and all. If you go to Diamandis, it's DIAMANDIS.com, and his website, in the upper left-hand corner, there are a series of little lines. You can click on that, and then it'll bring down a little drop-down menu. And he has a newsletter, which is called Abundance Insider. It's a weekly thing. And you can subscribe to it. All you have to do is give them your email address.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you will also no longer be amazed at my knowledge of technology, which I'm cool with, because these are other people's ideas. Thank you, Keith. So this is diamandis.com. We'll give you some information on that as well, because there are some phenomenal pieces. It's a whirlwind to keep up with. It's amazing. Each week, what comes up, it'll blow your mind. Literally blows your, it's crazy. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any other questions, comments? Good? No? Okay. So, how about now? Last chance. That's good stuff. Sometimes I make myself laugh. Often I make myself laugh. So this is what we commit to. We commit to being discovery of things that are of interest to you, leadership in giving you some different decisions. I don't want to give you what you should do. I want to hear some ideas, and we can work together and co-create the answers, really designed for each individual. Discernment, giving you perspective as well, and guidance. These are some of the things we want to offer to you. As we built this community, and as we're building this community, it strikes me more as that. Somebody recently at one of our Empowered Wealth programs where I was speaking on technology, it struck me as community. That's exactly what we built here. You are our community. You are why I love doing this. You are why I can speak for 2.5 hours. You are why I want to continue to spend some time learning stuff in Philadelphia for 3 days a week and a half ago, rather than spending those 3 nights with my family. I love them to death. I know that those are seriously important. Ken and I spent time away for that. We think it's important to bring this to you, but we understand that you rely on us for this. So we want to continue to commit to that. That is what we do in our role here. Now I want to end this with a question. If you could give your children or grandchildren one thing only, what would that be? Wisdom, a thirst for knowledge, faith, love, patience.
That's a good one.
Memories, did I hear memories over here? Yes, absolutely. Gratitude, I've heard before. Nobody said that's exactly what I was going to get to. You know what's interesting about this question? I was going to hang it out there and leave it there for you to answer yourself. What I found in the program in this one is what nobody said was more important. If you could leave them one thing. Yet the world clamors to leave them the one thing that's probably the least valuable. We're going to continue down the path of discovering, helping you discover, document what's valuable, and give that to the children. Give that to the grandchildren. If you knew what your great-great-grandfather thought when he or she and grandmother were coming across on a boat with nothing but 7 things in a suitcase to this country, wouldn't you have loved to have a journal of what they were thinking? They were scared witless. Go to Ellis Island and watch the movie one time. My wife and I and family did. And I sat there almost in tears thinking, oh my goodness, what did they do for us? Just like veterans. What did they do for us? So gratitude is easy when you view life this way. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful they made the choice to leave where they were rather than being in X, Y, or Z. So anyway, what I want to make sure we commit to you as a team to be here for you, service you well, hopefully bring you programs like this. You'll notice this is our 3rd in the year. We expanded it from 2 to 3, so it's not 7 hours each. I know it's getting close, but it's important for us because you spent time here. We know your most important investment in us is your time. That's one of the most important things. And if we can give you value and you guys love coming, we'll do this. We don't care if it's 4-year. We want to be able to have these forums because there's important things we want to convey to you. If I can have 3 or 4, then maybe we can keep them to an hour.
That'll
Thank
be
you.
the day. Yeah.
That'll be the day. Yeah.
That'll be the day.
That'll be the day. But I want to thank you guys for coming out, spending your time, your trust in us. The awards that you win in the magazine, you are in this magazine, they just put my name on there for you. It's your trust, your trust in us that gets us in here. I want to thank you for the people you send to us. We commit to continually working hard and attempting to be the best we can be for you. So thank you guys for your time here. We want to thank you for coming in. We want to thank you for all that you do for us. And most of all, we're grateful that you're here. Thank you.